Okay. All right. I believe we are live on Facebook right now. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for May 4th, 2020. A few technical problems up front, but I think we're good to go. At this point, I would ask the city clerk to do a call the roll.
Councilmember Vapurzian.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Councilmember Scott.
Here.
Councilmember Mosely.
I'm here.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Tierney.
Here.
Councilmember Saunders.
I'm here.
Councilmember Gardner is also here.
Councilmember Gardner.
Is also here.
Thanks, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. Speaking of Councilmember Gardner, I've asked Councilmember Gardner to lead us in invocation and pledge of allegiance.
All right, let's pray. Father God, we thank you so much for this day, Lord, and we thank you for the beautiful weather that you blessed us with in the past week, God. At this time, we are certainly mindful of the virus that is ongoing across our country and the globe, Lord, and we especially pray for the safety of all of the frontline workers who are providing health care to those affected by this virus, Lord. And we're also thankful for those who are working so hard right now to find a cure and a treatment for the virus as soon as possible. Father, for our city, we are thankful for those who serve Maumelle every day to keep our residents safe and to keep our city operating. And as we gather tonight, Lord, to conduct the city's business, we just ask for wisdom so that we can best represent the citizens of Maumelle. And we thank you for the opportunity that we have as elected officials to serve this great community. And Lord, we just ask for your blessings on Maumelle as a city as we continue on into the future. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll go ahead and lead us off. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America.
For which it stands,
Which it stands.
one nation,
One nation. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Justice for all.
I don't think a record label is going to be signing us up anytime soon.
Now is not the time for a computer crash. Thank you for that. We will move on to the approval of the
I think the mayor froze.
I can hear him trying to get it back up.
Okay.
Been a day of glitches here at City Hall. You guys, we appreciate your patience. If it could go wrong, it has. We're working on it.
You can picture that guy holding the microphone wrapped up in wire. Technical difficulties.
You're muted, Mayor. You're muted.
Am I back?
Yeah, now you're back.
And it looks we're still live on Facebook. I don't know what happened there. So we will move on to the approval of the April 20th regular meeting minutes. Y'all have received a copy of that in your council packet. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Is that a motion from Councilmember Tierney and a second from Councilmember Williams?
Right.
All right. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have two public comment cards. Today, they're both on agenda items. The city clerk will be reading those at the when we get to those agenda items. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start with, oh, goodness gracious, everything went away. We'll start with a department report, and I've asked Scott Grummer, who is currently serving as the Planning and Zoning Director, to give a report. I've brought Scott in as a panelist, and so Scott, if you could please give us an update on planning and zoning.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Alrighty. Do you need video or can I do without video, sir?
whatever floats your boat, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. Today's report is coming to you from the Planning and Zoning Department of the City of Maumelle. I have, as all of you know, I've been sitting in for that position interim right now due to the loss of Jim Neri, the previous director, a couple of months ago. So we have certainly been in a time of transition, working through that. So I'd like to commend Lauren Acock, who is the planning assistant. She's done an excellent job working through this transition. I know it's been tough on her, but as well as bringing me up to speed on the city of Maumelle and its ordinances. Within the planning department, we've been teleworking with Lauren from her home, and she's been probably as much active as she ever has been, trying to help me update applications and many of the checklists that we have to make sure that we set them up according to the way that I'm used to seeing them in a planning perspective related to the ordinances, and that's been going really well. We've had a little bit of activity this year, which has included the a residential development PRD that you've approved, and as well as a commercial construction addition in the industrial park, which as well was passed this past month. And we've seen some rezonings as well, which one of them is coming up on your agenda for today. As far as activity for this year, one of the things which we've recently moved into the new section of City Hall. And with that, we've transitioned into the same area as the permits and department and code enforcement, which has been really nice because now the interaction that we have between planning and permits, we can collaborate and work together really well. So it's a really nice, smooth transition. I'm looking forward to expanding that process with how we can work together. Another thing we're talking about is, which I'd like to come to possibly in the future, is trying to improve some of the technology that we utilize within the planning department, as well as possibly look into it as permits, looking for improved electronic application taking, as well as a review of plans. We've had some submissions that have come in from out of state, so it's been very beneficial to be able to look at things electronically versus paper. So those are some things that I'm seeing coming down the line that I'd like to talk to the planning commissioners about, as well as bring to city council. And then we've also been looking at all the paper files that we've had from all the years of activity at Maumelle. One of the things which I have a wall full of boxes full of plats and all kinds of documents. So I'd like to get those scanned in and start looking towards moving everything to the cloud, possibly for future reference, as well as bringing in GIS referenced data so that we can access information a lot quicker and make it more accessible for citizens of Maumelle. So that's basically my report in a nutshell.
Thank you, Mr. Grummer. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Grummer? Ms. Scott?
I just want to tell Scott how much we appreciate all of the double and triple duties that he's doing. I think he's doing a fine job and making the transition very smooth. And I was happy to hear tonight that he's already making plans for some technological improvements in those departments. I think it's needed. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you. I echo that. Scott is not the type that is just going to continue to do things the old way. He's always looking at new ways to do it, and that's pretty
I like that.
exciting to see. Is there any other questions or comments from Mr. Grummer? Seeing none, Scott, I'm sure we will be talking with you later on. At this time, it is the Planning Commission report, and I believe that was Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Gardner.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There were a number of different agenda items on the Planning Commission agenda this past time, but they were related to only 2 projects that were ongoing. The first is an expansion in the industrial park that's going to double the square footage of Cypress cold storage. So that's a nice expansion to hear about. And that passed. There's 3 items that passed, and that stays with the Planning Commission. So that does not come to the City Council. And then the other project, one was, well, you'll see them here in the packet upcoming. One is to transition the old property that was used for the Maumelle water plant from open space to special use residential. That passed, a due pass recommendation to the City Council was passed 5-2. And then on that same project to amend the zoning map for the Maumelle water plant and change it from open space to PRD, Planned Residential District. That also received actually received a unanimous due pass recommendation from the Planning Commission to the Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And we'll be talking about a couple of those issues coming up here pretty quick. The next order of business is I'd entertain a procedural motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved.
Offered.
Second.
I know the second was Councilmember Williams, and I think the first or the mover was Councilmember Scott. Was that correct? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only. All those in favor, please make sure your mic is unmuted and say yes.
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 All those opposed, please also make sure your mic is unmuted and say no. Motion carries. At this point in time, we'll move on to unfinished business. The City Council may recall that ordinances 991 and 992, which were dealing with sick leave accruals for police department. We tabled those to the first meeting in May as we awaited an Attorney General's opinion. The Attorney General's opinion hasn't yet arrived. And so I'd entertain a motion at this time to have these ordinances 991 and 992 tabled until the first meeting in July.
So
So
moved.
moved.
I think we had a motion from Councilmember Tierney, and I didn't. Second was from Councilmember Vapurzian. Okay. And is there any discussion on that motion? I don't think I see anyone indicating so. At this time, could we get a roll call vote, Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Mosely. Councilmember Mosely.
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders.
Yes.
Councilmember Scott.
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney.
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian.
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries, and those items will come back up at the first meeting in July. The next order of business is the first reading of ordinance 1001, amending the Maumelle land use plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1001, an ordinance amending the Maumelle land use plan and map and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. I believe it might be in order to have Mr. Grummer come back in and give an overview of this property. And so I believe we should be seeing Mr. Grummer is back. Thank you, Mr. Grummer. Could you please introduce this ordinance for the City Council?
Yes, sir. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is a request for amendment to the Maumelle Master Land Use Plan for the old Maumelle water plant from open space to special use residential. The request is coming from Central Arkansas Water, who's the current owner, and it's also from one of their potential buyers who's wanting to develop the property into residential. They've mentioned the potential for multi-family type units that could range anywhere from townhomes to apartments of density of around anywhere from 21 to 30 units is what they've discussed. We've had approximately 150 emails opposing this and one in favor. Of those that were opposed, the majority, it was an organized effort, and they've mentioned the main point is unless and until the applicant and or their engineers or other developers present an acceptable plan for a suitable residential local street or drive to access the property for residential purposes, they strongly urge the Planning Commission do not pass. So the property itself, which is located behind the Maumelle Country Club, it has been decommissioned from its previous water plant activity, and it has been cleared of all buildings with the exception of a few storage buildings, and access to the property is by a private access easement. That access is a paved road ranging anywhere from 18 feet wide to 20 feet wide until it gets to the right of way, which it jumps up to about 24 feet wide and then connects to Club Manor. Overall, the property is surrounded by the golf course, so it's surrounded by open space, and the other uses that are in the area include single family to multifamily to special use residential, which is the same that they're applying for. So the densities range anywhere from single family housing to the north to multifamily housing all around it, with densities of about 5 to 7 units per acre. The property itself is limited by the access as it is current, but the access easement seems to provide, based on our analysis, sufficient room for expansion as needed. So the applicant is asking for a change in land use plan and a change in zoning to special use residential and PRD so that they can move forward to develop plans for improvements to the land as well as the access.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to go ahead and let me see here, bring in a representative of the applicant, which is Mr. Mark Bingman. Mark, you should be in here now. If you'd like, you can have up to 3 minutes to explain this project. And then following that, we'll hear an email from a representative of the opposition, and then we can move on to city council discussion. Mr. Bingman, your mic is muted.
Was doing fine up until then.
Okay, here we go. I got you, Mr. Bingman. We can hear you now.
Yeah, okay. I still can't see anybody, but if you can hear me, that's all that matters at this point. I'm representing the Central Arkansas Water. that, like has been previously stated, would like to have this rezoned. We believe it's the highest and best use for this property. It obviously was an eyesore as a treatment plant previously. Obviously, this could not be an industrial site. It can't be a retail site. Most likely wouldn't be an office site. So residential seems to be the highest and best use. We do have a developer that is under contract with Central Arkansas Water to do upscale multifamily residential type use. That's what we're here for tonight, is for the rezoning and for the land use change. I believe that we can all sit down as reasonable people and figure out an access, which I believe is a concern of the country club. And they have stated in the past, both when we met with them and at the planning commission meeting, that they are not against the rezoning, but would like to have some input and discussions on the access and the easement that we have to that property. So being the highest and best use, we just ask for consideration of the rezoning, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and come back to those. Any questions that the council may have. For the time being, I believe we have a public comment card. Madam City Clerk, could you please read that comment?
This public comment comes from Gib Carpenter. I'll be reading it in its entirety. My name is Gib Carpenter. I live at 222 Mountain Terrace Circle, and I am a member of the Maumelle Country Club. Out of respect for the efficient use of your time tonight, the club will not attempt to overwhelm you at this meeting with the sheer volume of the members' concerns about the proposed change of use and rezoning of the property adjacent to the club and the golf course. I can assure you, the council members, that they will be hearing from our members that reside in their individual wards prior to the final reading on this matter. We are very disappointed in the Planning Commission's recommendation, but understand that they may be more focused on the technical design process. To date, the country club has not received any proposal from the applicant regarding any suitable means to access the property for residential development. Our members are extremely concerned that a private street or drive would adversely affect our operations and business opportunities and will present a significant safety risk to us and any future residents in that area. While we know this is not the forum, we want the City Council to know that we are prepared to vigorously defend our legal property rights regarding the expansion of the prescribed access easement that will be used by the Water Department. But that shouldn't be necessary. We know that the city will not be able to patrol and enforce a private street, which undoubtedly will result in conflicts with events and activities at the club. In a word, it is really a bad idea to rezone that property to residential without a suitable method to access it, which we haven't seen. Thank you for your time and concern for an important business entity in Maumelle. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
There's already
who
an
is-
easement in place.
I can just be so Mr. Carpenter is here and available for questions, as is Mr. Bingman, as well as the applicant. The engineer, Mr. Holloway, is here. I can bring any of those folks in to answer any questions. At this time, I'd like to open it up for city council discussion. Councilmember Scott.
I'm wondering if Mr. Bingman seemed to indicate that there could be some kind of a compromise made that would be palatable for both sides of the issue. And yet in Mr. Carpenter's comment, it didn't sound like possibly there was. I'm wondering, is there or isn't there something that could be worked out?
So I think it's safe to say there is currently nothing that has been worked out. And I think from Mr. Bingman's perspective, there is something that can be worked out. And then Mr. Carpenter thinks that there isn't something that can be worked out. I'm happy to bring any of those folks in if you had a question for one of them. Councilmember Scott.
I just don't understand. Is this an impact? So, I guess that's just my concern. Is it an impact? It's kind of a shame, you know, it's a nice piece of property. It would bring in some high-end tenants. It would probably possibly bring some membership to the country club. Our golf courses are extremely important to the city of Maumelle and extremely important to the property value surrounding the golf courses. So I feel that the opportunity to increase revenue is important, but I hear the concern about it being detrimental to the country club. So I guess I would just like to expand on that a little bit. Is it just traffic flow? Too many cars?
That question is directed to who now?
I think Mr. Carpenter. Yeah.
Okay, I've moved Mr. Carpenter in. I've unmuted you. Gib, did you have a response to Councilmember Scott?
Thank you for the opportunity to address you and answer any of your questions. Alderman Scott, to answer your question, we have not seen a proposal for an access route to the planned development. The route that was used by the water department passes
I'm being recorded
to our pro shop in the area that we use.
I don't want to talk.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I had to mute someone.
Okay.
Please carry
on. It's an extremely dense area of golf cart traffic and players. As I indicated to the Planning Commission, there are a number of routes to the driving range, to the practice facility, to the first tee, returning from the 18th tee, that would be in extreme conflict with any residential traffic. The water department's traffic was extremely light, a few trucks a day in and out. And we know that we can't prohibit someone from accessing that property. But our concern is that for the purpose of a residential development, you're going to have a residential grade street with residential type traffic. And the current route is totally unacceptable because it's just too close to our pro shop. As I explained to Mr. Bingman and the developer, the Saturday prior to our meeting them on the property, there were 108 golf carts between the pro shop and the putting green, if any of you are familiar with that area. And it would have been impossible for someone that wanted to get home to their place in that development to even possibly get through there. There's a number of concerns for the liability of golf balls that would come into that area that are being played in on the number 9 fairway. There's just a lot of reasons that is not a suitable route. Now, the engineer and the applicant haven't presented anything else to the club. So we haven't said absolutely no because we don't have anything to say no to. What they've said is they have an easement and by golly, they're going to be able to put a road in. Well, we don't agree with that. And we've gone through this before with another developer. Any of you happen to remember Bottom Line? And we prevailed then, but that's not what any of us want to do. Right this minute, we just feel that property is not suitable for a residential. And Mr. Bingman said a while ago that we said that we didn't object to it being residential. I take exception to that because we do at this point take exception because it can't be accessed for residential. And there's one other concern that I haven't heard mentioned, but as a developer, I'm aware that by city ordinance, there have to be 2 methods of ingress and egress for emergency vehicle purposes. So not only do they not have 2, we haven't come up with where they have 1 suitable. So that would be, I think, where the club stands right now on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, sir. Was there any additional, Councilmember Williams? I believe I saw your hand up earlier.
No, it was answered. Thank
Okay.
you.
Was there any other discussion
Yeah,
on this matter? Councilmember Tierney?
yes. I was, watching the planning commission, and one of the upsides of the change is that the fact that once that land is sold, that will enable the Maumelle, not Maumelle, but Central Arkansas Water to pay off a portion of the debt that all the Maumelle residents are now paying on a monthly basis. That's the good news. The bad news is I was also looking at the map about how all the traffic that goes in and out the cart path where they are proposing to put in the easement right now. And that I agree with the speaker for the country club that that's a terrible idea. What I'd like to ask him though, how would they feel if that route was moved to the south side of the building?
I'm sorry, is that a question for Mr.
Yes.
Carpenter?
Yes, it is.
Let me bring him back in. Mr. Carpenter, welcome back. You are
Okay.
unmuted.
And Mayor, if you want to leave me in, I won't speak unless spoken to. But Alderman Tierney, I can't say how the club would feel. I'm one member of the club. I was appointed to spearhead our task force to look at this. But to date, we haven't had anything to look at. I would say the south side would be preferable to the north side because the north side absolutely does not have any room available. As far as a proposal to the south side, I can't say how the club would respond to that because we haven't seen it. We don't know how it would impact our operation.
Right. During the planning commission, a couple of times, the Central Arkansas Water people were asking, what did the club recommend? Did they have any preference? And they only had one speaker at that time, and he was like, that's not our job. It's one of those things that kind of would probably encourage the country club to say, okay, this is what we prefer, and then see if they will work with you on that grounds.
Well, I was the speaker that said that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And once again, we are not design engineers. It's not our role to say what they can do, can't do. I mentioned it to Eric Holloway about that route, and he gave me a response of why that wasn't feasible in his opinion, but that may be something that he wants to discuss with them. But it's not up to us to say, well, this side's a bad idea, so go to the other side. It's, I think, incumbent on them to make a proposal to us and then allow us an opportunity to evaluate it and respond to it, not for us to do their planning for them.
But excuse me, but Mr. Carpenter, you would have a preference, I'm assuming, right?
We have a preference that if it were developed residential, that the road not be on the north side of the building. I would say our preference at this moment is we don't see that the benefit cost value analysis for us is where we think that we would like to see it developed as residential to start with. So, you're asking me a hypothetical about an either or, and today we don't think and oppose that the property be rezoned to residential in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Next up is Councilmember Mosely.
Yeah. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've watched both the Planning Commission meetings on this, the subcommittee and the actual meeting. Both were very lengthy, and both were probably focused mostly on the access to get in and out with Planning Commission in their last meeting, I think trying to encourage the applicant to hold off until some discussions had been had with the country club. But I can also see why the applicant wanted to go ahead and proceed before they put a lot of time and money into designing access and I can also see the country club's position very much, because I drove over there and drove up to the gate where the property is, and I had a rough time getting to the gate and leaving the gate without hitting a golf cart. So there's definitely a lot of activity around the country club, and there's definitely something to be worked out there. So if there's any way, I would encourage, if there's any way for you all to be talking here before we get around to final vote, I think that might be beneficial in helping us decide what to do. But like I said, at this point, I can see both sides of the thing, and I'll be listening closely for 2 more meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosely. Councilmember Gardner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that I picked up on from the Planning Commission and the subcommittee was that they focused a lot on the actual development piece of what was going to be built there, but that was not what they were considering. And so with the 2 items that we have before us are the amendment to change it from open space to special use residential, and then to change the zoning from open space to PRD. And so just one thing that I thought was important to point out is that the vote on these 2 items that we have before us does not necessarily approve a development. The development's going to have its own set of hurdles that it's going to have to pass even to get out of the Planning Commission. So that's where the Planning Commission is going to do the heavy lifting here and making sure that this property is developed responsibly. So I just wanted to point that out, because I know a lot of the time from the Planning Commission was spent debating the actual merits of the development, when really what we're looking at is just amending the land use and the zoning. And so we're not necessarily voting in a month from now to approve development. We're just looking at what the land is used for.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner. Is there any additional discussion, Madam City Attorney?
In line with what Councilmember Gardner was just saying, I would like to draw a few sections of the code that are relevant to the attention of the council members. The first is 94-492, which addresses the preservation of open space, which is important because this is the reason, well, one of the reasons we're here. Open space can only be sold under certain circumstances. So I'm going to just read some sections. Open space shall be maintained so that their use and enjoyment as open space are not diminished or destroyed. Open space areas may be owned, preserved, and maintained as required by this section by any of the following mechanisms or combination of such mechanisms. And it describes, the first is dedication to the city or an appropriate public agency, which CAW is a quasi-public agency. Number 2 is common ownership of the open space by a residents association, which assumes full responsibility for maintenance. Or number 3, deed restricted private ownership, which shall prevent development and or subsequent subdivision of the open space land and provide for maintenance. So you can see that if this is going to be used for a residential purpose, it has to be rezoned before it's transferred away from the quasi-public agency, because otherwise you would have to have that deed restriction here. And the purpose for that is because the code, this section, recognized the importance of having open space in the city and preserving that open space. The next section that I want to talk about is in Chapter 54, and it deals with the criteria to be used for an amendment to the land use plan, and it's section 54-79, and it's paragraph 7, and it discusses the specific criteria that the council needs to consider and also discuss in regards to whether this criteria is met in determining whether to amend the land use plan. Number 1, or A, Section A, is that other changes that have occurred in the neighborhood since the land use plan was adopted or the latest amendment was enacted. So we have to look at the latest amended version of our land use plan was from 2014. So the council should consider not just for this particular piece of property, but the neighborhood that that property sits in. What changes have occurred in that neighborhood since 2014 that would justify an amendment to the land use plan? B, whether these changes resulted in a change to the neighborhood's character sufficiently to justify the proposed land use plan change. So has there been a change to the character of the neighborhood since 2014 where this piece of property sits? C, issues and concerns raised by the neighborhood when submitted with sufficient specificity to enable the commission or council to respond to the issues. So it is important that we consider whatever issues are brought up by the surrounding area and people that live there, work there, surrounding businesses. And finally, D, other substantial or technical evidence that any proponent or opponent of the proposed change submits.
Can I ask
Thank
a question
you.
about that, Mayor?
Yes, you may.
And this may be to you or to the city attorney or maybe even Scott Grummer. As I understand it, isn't a water treatment plant that is an allowed building to be on OS zoned land? Is that correct?
It was because it's public agency use.
Okay, so that's why it was partly why it was zoned OS, I would assume, because it was a public agency, being it was a Maumelle water treatment plant. So now you mentioned, I think the last time it was adopted was in 2014. Well, since that time, the entire water treatment plant has been demolished, and now it's a vacant piece of parcel of property. So I would wonder if that, in my mind, that meets the criteria for requesting this, since the OS zoning went towards the former treatment plant, which no longer exists.
Thank you, sir. Was there any other questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember Saunders, is that you raising your hand?
I would mention,
Not me.
Councilmember Mosely?
okay, yeah. The only effect I could see maybe on the neighborhood is a video in Club Manor. There might be some more traffic. If there's 25 or 30 additional residential units in there, there may be a little bit more traffic. But as far as I can tell, that would be not the only adverse thing in that area.
Thank you, sir. Last call for discussion on Ordinance 1001, amending the Maumelle land use plan. Seeing none, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting. For those members of the public who aren't used to the fun and joyous times we have at council meetings, ordinances of a general and permanent nature read at 3 different council meetings. So this is the first. It'll be read 2 other times from there. But we will go ahead and move on to the first reading of Ordinance 1002, amending the Maumelle zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1002, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
And this is the companion piece to Ordinance 1001. Ordinance 1001 changes the land use. This changes the zoning. Does the City Council have any discussion on this issue? Seeing none, this will be on second reading at the next City Council meeting. The next order of business is the elected official compensation committee. I will go ahead and move the chairman, Mr. Jeff Van Patten, in as a panelist here. And while that is occurring, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the memo that I included in the council packet that explains why at this horrible time these are coming forward. For those in the public, there's an ordinance that is on the books that requires that on every even numbered year, that the city stand up an elected official salary committee to review the compensation of elected officials, and that those reports are to be presented to the city council no later than the first meeting of May. And that would be this year. And those time restrictions were put in fairly recently to make sure that as folks are considering running for different elected offices, that they did so knowing what the compensation would be in that year. And so just a little bit of background on the reasoning for the timing of the presentation of these. Mr. Jeff Van Patten was the chairman of the committee. I listed the members of that committee are in the memo, and oh my gosh, my lights just went out. Mr. Van Patten, the floor is yours.
Hello, Mayor, members of City Council. You're looking good tonight. It's good to see everybody. I had the privilege to chair this compensation committee this round. I've also had the privilege to be on it, to serve on this committee 2 other times. Once, I guess 7 years ago, when Jamie Stell, former alderman, was chairman, and I guess 3 or 4 years ago when Ken Saunders was chairman. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on this committee and chair it, and we had some great committee members. I know you all have those names in front of you, but I'm going to read them to you anyway because I appreciate them serving with us. Joshua Price, Alderman Chad Gardner, Alderman Michael Tierney, Michelle Elliott, Eric Jones, and myself. So thank you for that. I would say also that 7 years ago, I remember something Jamie Stell said, and that was on this committee, focus on the salary for the position, not for the individual. And so that's what we try to do. But in any event, I would like to start with Mayor, first of all. And y'all, I guess, have my notes or the comparison of the different peer cities, we call them. But a little history, the Maumelle mayor's salary currently is $88,100. It is currently the 9th lowest out of our peer group of cities of 10 cities. In 2018, the mayor's salary was combined with the mayor's automobile allowance. But in 2018 received no salary or compensation increase. Going back to 2013, the mayor's salary was $85,000 combined. That was salary and car allowance. In 2014, the mayor's combined salary was also $85,000, and from 2015 to 2018, the combined salary was $88,100. Then from 18 to 2020, the mayor's combined salary was also $88,100, having been combined with the salary and the car allowance. In sum, the mayor's salary has increased only $3,100 in 8 years, possibly longer. Currently, in 2020, a salary of $96,805 is the average of the 10 peer cities. With a 3% increase of the average to take the salary up for the next 2 years, the salary would be $99,700. I guess I hope you can see in your handout where the mayor's salary ranked next to last currently in our group of peer cities, and this would. Our recommendation of a combined salary and compensation of $99,700 would bring the mayor's position of Maumelle to 5th highest in our group of peer cities. So that is our recommendation for the mayor's position and for the council to consider. I'd like to move on to city clerk unless there's any questions about that.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm sorry. No. City clerk. The Maumelle city clerk's position is currently at $61,800. is the third highest of the 10 peer cities. In 2018, the city clerk received a salary increase of $4,680 or 8.19% from the previous salary of $57,120. With a 3% increase to take the salary over the next 2 years, the salary would be $63,654. We currently recommend a new city clerk salary of $63,654, which using current peer salaries would place the city clerk's salary as third highest, which is where it is now, in the 10 peer city salaries. So, and then if I may, from there, move on to city attorney.
Mr. Van Patten, if you don't
Yes.
mind, through the marvels of technology, I'm looking at some of the comments on Facebook that are asking how y'all chose the peer cities to compare to.
Well, we chose those from population sizes that are similar to the city of Maumelle, and also I would say cities that has similar makeup to ours. As an example, there may be some cities in eastern Arkansas or western Arkansas or wherever that were near the size of Maumelle. However, those cities basically were declining, and so we tried to pick. They were on the decline, and just now their population had gotten to a point where it was similar to the size of Maumelle. So we tried to pick in the committee. We use I think all but 2 or 3 were the same peer cities that we used 4 years ago, but we tried to pick cities that had a similar population size to Maumelle, but also had several lifestyle qualities that was at least somewhat similar to Maumelle. I think Cabot, Bryant, those are suburbs of the bigger city of Little Rock, just like Maumelle is. Sherwood, Jacksonville, Russellville, similar size, Searcy, and then also Paragould was included in that because they're similar size cities, as was Bella Vista and Russellville. In Van Buren.
Thank you, sir.
I hope that helps. Anyway, I believe we were starting to talk about city attorney, and the Maumelle city attorney's salary is currently at $89,250, is the 5th highest of the 10 peer cities. In 2018, the city attorney position received a salary increase of $4,250, or about 5% from the previous salary. We had, I'd like to brag, Michelle Elliott did a lot of the heavy lifting for our committee, and I'd like to brag on her at this time. She was always bringing some really great statistical analysis to our meetings and very helpful to us. But using statistical analysis, we determined an average salary in the peer group of cities of $94,392. So that salary of this position would be competitive with peer cities. The committee decided to recommend a salary of $97,224 for this position, which is an increase of about 3% over the average. This proposed salary would put this position at third highest in the group of our peer cities. I guess as the council will note, and anybody else watching or listening to this, all our recommendations here are we want to make these salaries competitive, but we're not trying to be the most expensive or the highest paying in the state. So that's, but we want someone to want to come to work for Maumelle because the salaries are competitive. The other thing I would like to add to the city attorney's package is after consultation with Keisha and Maumelle Human Resources, Keisha Walker, and lengthy study, the committee also recommends that the city of Maumelle start providing a city attorney pension retirement program similar to the mayor and city clerk's retirement program. We noticed that some other cities were offering this, and we believe this is important so that this position is competitive with peer cities and also in the workforce in general. So that's That's an addition the mayor had actually asked us to look at when we started this process, I guess in January or whenever, and ended it in February. And that's what we came up with. Any questions on that before we move on to the city council's salaries? No,
I don't see any.
okay. City council. The Maumelle City Council salary is at $7,200 a year. It is tied for 5th highest of the 10 peer cities. In 2018, the city attorney, the city council received a salary increase of $1,200 from a salary of $6,000. Our committee is proposing a salary increase of $300 annually for the city council members, which would take that salary for the council members to $7,500 annually. The council obviously doesn't do this job for the money. They do it for the love of the city. But we thought this would keep these positions competitive. With this extra $300 a year, the council members would remain as 5th highest in our peer cities, so they don't go up any from that. As I finish this up, I did want to remark that our committee finished our study and recommendations near the end of February. And as that was happening, the coronavirus stuff was just now becoming an issue and making itself known and what have you. So we were basically working under the assumptions of budgets that we had, or historical budgets. These have been well thought out recommendations that we bring to the council, but when the council implements them and how they implement them with the current budgets that not only Maumelle but all cities have, will be up to the council and the mayor to work out. But with that, I close and open it up to any questions of myself about these findings.
Thank you, Mr. Van Patten. I was discussing this with him. This is not a overly fun committee or one that's going to get him a lot of accolades from the public, but I appreciate him and all the folks that spent time doing this. With that, are there any general questions geared toward Mr. Van Patten? It looks like Councilmember Gardner is raising his hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, just wanted to thank Mr. Van Patten for leading our committee. He did a super job of keeping us on task, and we finished so quick that like he mentioned, we wrapped this up sometime like I think the 3rd week of February, well before any of the COVID-19 stuff had begun to affect our country. So the numbers that were made were suggested were based off of that. A couple of things that I wanted to point out. This is an interesting position to be put in. So thank you to the mayor for throwing Councilmember Tierney and myself in there as new council members to serve on this committee. But one thing that Jeff really stressed was that we are looking at the elected official salaries for that position, and not for any one of us or for anybody that's currently elected. And so we're looking, far out into the future here. These recommendations would not take place until, the changes would not take place until 2021. And basically what we're doing here is we're setting the salaries all the way out to January of 2023. And so that's kind of why we came to that conclusion of adding that extra little bit for inflation over the next couple of years. But one of the things that jumped out to me was specifically on the mayor's salary. I was really surprised to learn as we started looking into this and going through the budgets that the mayor has not received a compensation increase since 2015. So, even if we didn't make a change to this person's position now, we'd be going all the way until 2023 without adjusting the mayor's salary. And so that's pretty rare that someone would go that long without a salary change. And then the other one that jumped out was the city attorney salary. And Michelle Elliott, as Mr. Van Patten mentioned, did a ton of research specifically on the city attorney salary. And it was difficult for us to actually find peer cities that have a city attorney that does the role that our city attorney does here in Maumelle. Many of the ones that you see on that list actually serve as part-time city attorneys, and it's not a full-time position. So in order for us to be competitive and to attract candidates that want to run for city attorney and represent our city, we felt that that increase was certainly warranted for that position. And then you also have to consider the job market. If being here in Central Arkansas, if you're an attorney, you can go somewhere and make a really good salary. And so if we want to attract top tier candidates, you're going to have to pay a salary that's comparable to what a person could earn in the private market. So we felt for the mayor position and for the city attorney position, that those two especially deserved a look, since it's been so long for the mayor and then the city attorney. We felt like that position should be brought up to what the demands of the job are. So I've got some other things to say too, but I'll mute myself for now and let everybody else chip in.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner. I'm going crazy text messaging, and we're trying to get Councilmember Williams back on to the call, and she disconnected there. Looks like Councilmember Mosely has a question or comment.
I mainly just wanted to have a comment. I wanted to thank Mr. Van Patten for being involved in this again. He's always willing to contribute to the community and keep his hand on the vibes that are coming out of the city here. And I always appreciate his comments and suggestions and that sort of thing. And I want to thank everybody on the committee, and thank you, Alderman Tierney and Gardner, for serving on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Alderman Mosely.
Thank you. Was there any other questions or comments for Mr. Van Patten at this time? Councilmember Tierney?
I'd like to echo what Councilmember Gardner said. I thought Mr. Patton did a great job. We were trying to be conservative. And again, this was before the COVID-19 struck. And we thought we were coming in really kind of low with the numbers. And then the world kind of changed on us at the same time. But I just want to compliment him on doing what I thought was a great job.
Thank you, Alderman Tierney.
Thank you. Mr. Van Patten, I'll go ahead and park you back in the lobby. If you wouldn't mind hanging on as we go through the ordinances, there may be a particular question or comment. But again, thank you for that. All right. So at this time, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the first reading of Ordinance 1003. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that ordinance by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1003, an ordinance amending the compensation schedule for the elected position of the mayor of the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
Thank you. First order of business is we do have a public comment that was submitted on this. And really the comment pertains to this and ordinances, the next several ordinances. Madam City Clerk, could you please read that correspondence?
I'll be reading public comment submitted by resident RJ Mazzoni. Respectfully, I would like to recommend tabling these ordinances until the normal budget process. Only the city council positions are up for election, and I think that benefits to our city for delaying voting on these ordinances. It far outweighs the potential of impacting someone's decision to run for office due to a potential increase of $25 per month in pre-tax earnings. By incorporating it into the normal budget process timeline, any approved action will not impact any of these positions. First and foremost is timing. I understand that city code dictates this proposal, but it couldn't come at a worse time. With the potential of a significant number of our citizens looking at unemployment or loss of their businesses, I think that voting now to raise the city official's salary sends a wrong message to those suffering. Waiting until budget season will give everyone a better picture of the impact COVID-19 has had on people's welfare. Additionally, I am concerned about what our financial status will be at the end of 2020. We ended last year with an $88,000 deficit in operational spending, with an overall deficit of $500,000, including capital expenditures. Because of the virtual city council meeting, March's monthly financials were presented graphically instead of using the standard data table. So I used February data for my calculations. For the first 2 months of 2020, we ended up spending an increase of $175,000. When I prorated it for 2 months of our sales tax overpayment, we're presented with an $84,000 deficit. Granted, this is too small of a data sample to project accurate end of the year status, but it does have a disturbing trend, shows a disturbing trend. Finally, there is the economic impact we could be facing with the current quarantine. 2020's budget operational spending has increased by almost $1 million. We average an annual increase in operational revenue of $500,000. If we follow historical trends, we are already looking at potentially $300,000 to $500,000 in operating deficit, not including any capital expenses. This does not include any revenue declines associated with the pandemic. Hopefully, we will rebound quickly, but if we experience prolonged recession, we could be forced to make deep tax cuts next year in next year's spending. Doing this on top of a raise for elected officials would not be received well. So waiting for the budget process to make an informed decision will be beneficial to everyone. Thank you for your time in this matter. That's it.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and thank you, Mr. Mazzoni, for your comments. At this time, I'd like to open this issue up for discussion. Councilmember Gardner.
I guess I'll go ahead and jump off here. So I'm going to agree with some of the comments that Mr. Mazzoni said. And when we did this in February, we had no idea that we were all going to be living through a pandemic and going through what we're going through now. I went through the ordinance today, and as I read the ordinance and understand it, the committee only had to make their recommendations by the first meeting in May. And as I understand it, this is the first time we've actually ever done it this early. I believe that change was made, was it in 2019? And Councilmember Mosely, you may have been the one that sponsored that ordinance to move it up. Yeah, and I completely agree with why it was moved up. I think it's important to set the salaries in advance of the filing period so that potential candidates can what their salary is going to be. But in this case, as was mentioned, we only have council members that are up for election. And so what I was going to throw out there and just kind of see how everybody else thought about this, what would the appetite be for you all to table the second reading of this until October 5th, which would be the first Monday of October? That kind of puts it in the middle of the budget session. So it would actually be voted on, assuming it wasn't tabled again, on the 19th. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I do agree that this is, the timing is not good for us to try to make a decision on this in the next month. And if we tabled it until October, we could still put that into the budget process, which will be coming up during late October and November. So just wanted to throw that out there and see what the thoughts were.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Tierney, I believe you're muted. Hang on. Okay, I've unmuted you.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking the exact same thing that, we ought to, table this for a while, and October 5th sounds great. If somebody wants to propose that, I'd second it. If nobody wants to propose it, I will.
Thank you.
Well, I will make that motion if that's what, unless there's other comments. I prefer to hear everybody else's thoughts, but I thought this gives us the year to think about it, and then we can come back to it in October and see what our financial condition is. And the other piece to this is, I know we have to look at our tax dollars and where they're being spent, but I think we're talking about really important positions to the city. And so, these will be especially even more important in 2 years' time when the mayor and city attorney and the clerk treasurer will all be up for election as well. But I thought that we presented it. We met the ordinance's requirements to present it. And now if we can table ordinance 1003, the second reading until October 5th, I would support that.
I agree.
Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, I totally agree. By October, we should have a better idea of where we're landing on our operating budget. Our spending has increased this year and our revenues are probably declining, and we're probably going to see a better picture of that in the next couple of months. So I don't think it's harmful to delay it. And I would totally support delaying it until October. Has someone made a motion, or would you like to hear the comments first?
Yes, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Mosely.
Yeah, I agree. The timing's not good with all this going on and some of our budget considerations and that sort of thing. I can certainly understand the gentleman's argument, and I think he has a real point there. At first, I'd forgotten that we didn't have any other elections. It's just the aldermen, so it's not that big a deal as far as knowing what you're going to make before you decide to run for office. So I was going to suggest we just kind of wait until the third reading and then maybe table it then if we didn't feel comfortable. If everybody wants to table it now that far out, I might vote for that, but I would almost as soon just kind of wait a couple more meetings and just see what the climate is then and see maybe how our tax revenues are coming in and so on and so forth. But either way, I see Mr. Mazzoni's point. I sure do. Thanks.
Thank you. I do see we have managed to get Councilmember Williams back. Welcome back. So we have a motion and a second to table this until was it the first meeting in October?
October, yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
table the second reading until October the 5th.
Thank you. Councilmember Scott.
I just wanted to make sure that the motion read ordinances 1003, 4, 5, 6. Is that correct?
Well, technically, we haven't read ordinances 1004 through 1007 yet. So I was operating under the assumption that we would go ahead and have the first reading of each tonight and then make a motion for each one. Is that the proper way to do that?
Okay.
That would work. So we have a motion and a second to have the second reading tabled until the first meeting in October. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt,
Let me unmute him. Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Scott,
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders,
Yes.
Councilmember Mosely.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. This will be on second reading in October. If we could have the first reading of ordinance 1004, amending a compensation schedule for the city clerk, Madam City Clerk Treasurer.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, and ordinance to be entitled Ordinance 1004, and ordinance amending the compensation schedule for the elected position of the City Clerk Treasurer of the City of Maumelle.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
I'll make the same motion that we table the second reading of ordinance 1004 until October the 5th.
I second it.
We've got a motion and a second to table that until the First meeting in October. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosely,
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders,
Yes.
Councilmember Scott,
Yes.
Councilmember Gartner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. We will move on to the first reading of ordinance 1005, amending a compensation schedule for the city attorney. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance 1005, an ordinance amending the compensation schedule for the elected position of the City Attorney of Maumelle and for other purposes.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to table ordinance 1005 until the first meeting in October?
So moved.
Tierney. Is that second from Gardner?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Is there any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk Treasurer, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian, Councilmember Vapurzian,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Gartner,
Yes.
Councilmember Scott,
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders,
Yes.
Councilmember Mosely.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And now I believe we are on to the first reading of ordinance 1006, amending a compensation schedule for the city council.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1006, an ordinance amending the compensation schedule for the elected position of the City Council member of the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
Motion to table ordinance number 1006 until
Second.
until the first meeting of October.
Outstanding. We have a motion second to table ordinance 1006 until the first meeting in October. Is there any discussion or debate on that matter? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosely,
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders,
Yes.
Councilmember Scott,
Yes.
Councilmember Gartner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. That'll be on second reading at the first meeting in October. We can move on to the first reading of ordinance 1007, providing retirement benefits for the city attorney. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could read that by title only, please.
Yes, sir. Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1007, an ordinance providing for the retirement benefits in accordance with Section 24-12-120 of the Arkansas Code for the elected position of the City Attorney of the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
I'd like to move that we table ordinance 1007 to October 5th.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Tierney to table the second reading of ordinance 1007 until the second meeting in October, and that was seconded by Councilmember Scott. Is there any discussion or debate on that motion? Councilmember Gardner?
Just one thing I wanted to say on this one. This one is a little bit different than the others because we're not talking about the actual salary schedule, but adding a retirement benefit that the city attorney does not currently have. So I just wanted to mention that this one wouldn't set a salary, but it does provide for retirement, just like the position of mayor and city clerk has. And then the other piece to this, if I remember correctly from our discussion, and Councilmember Tierney, correct me here, or especially City Attorney Krebs, correct me. I believe you have to serve for 10 years in that position before you are eligible for the pension for the city attorney. Is that correct?
That is, if you want, Madam City Attorney, I could take that so you don't have to. Yeah, well, it says 10 years. There's some provisions if you've served in other roles that can count for some of those. And just a reminder to the city council, what we have is the for the mayor's position and the city clerk's position, it's automatic. It's just as a matter of law. And then the state law says that for the city attorney's position, that an ordinance has to be passed for that. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off,
No,
Miss Krebs.
That's perfect. That's what I just wanted to throw out there. This is a little bit different. This is adding that benefit, and they would have to serve at least 10 years in an eligible position to get that.
And then plus reach that age
Exactly.
of either 60 or 62 or 65. I don't recall exactly. Councilmember Mosely, is your hand raised on this issue?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I agree with City Council Member Gardner on that. This is a different thing, and I see no reason why we shouldn't go ahead and address that. So I'll be a no on that motion. I feel like we ought to go ahead and keep that one running. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with
that. I agree.
I was gonna agree with Councilmember Mosely as well. This one's a little bit separate, and I personally think it's a benefit that should be added to that position. So I'm more than comfortable voting no on this motion and continuing the discussion over the next month.
Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a monthly obligation to that retirement, or is it like the other ones that at the time someone retires, we just kind of come up with the money like magic?
The latter.
Magic. Okay. Thank you.
Well, and I'll add on to that, Councilmember Scott. One of the things that we looked at is how many people we are currently paying a pension, and the city actually only, well, we don't have many that we're paying. And so because of the requirements that they serve a certain length of time, it's a big hurdle to cross. And of course you have to be a certain age, like Mayor Norris mentioned as well.
Right.
So a reminder, we have a motion and a second to table ordinance 1007 until the first meeting in October. Is there any further debate on that? Seeing none, we can go ahead with the vote. I can't see Councilmember Vapurzian's video, so I won't be able to count his vote unless the video comes back on. But Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please give us a roll call vote on the motion to table this until the first meeting in October.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Mosely,
No.
Councilmember Saunders,
No.
Councilmember Scott,
No.
Councilmember Gartner,
No.
Councilmember Williams,
No.
Councilmember Tierney,
No.
Councilmember Vapurzian,
No.
Councilmember Holt.
No.
Motion failed.
Thank you. So it looks like we've got Councilmember Vapurzian back from the fog of the San Francisco Bay there, where it looks like he was being gobbled up. This ordinance is still on the table for discussion. Is there any further discussion on ordinance 1007 at this time? Seeing none, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting. And that'll move us on to the next agenda item, an escrow agreement, as it is titled there. Madam City Attorney, the floor is yours.
All right. I included a large number of documents in the packet concerning this agreement. I hope you guys have all had a chance to read through that, or at least kind of glance through it. This is concerning an agreement that was entered into back in 2016. There was a resolution passed authorizing the agreement, and that is 2016-15. The agreement is with a company called Newton Ridge LLC, And the city had a number of other agreements with entities that had common ownership with Newton Ridge LLC in the process of gaining the right of way for access, for us to have our new entrance at White Oak Crossing. Those agreements were consolidated into an escrow agreement at that time in 2016-15, and that agreement required that the city deposit $123,750 into an escrow account with Lender's Title Company. That agreement it's come time to determine who the funds should be paid out to. Half of the funds that were placed into the escrow account were released to the city when the roadway was completed. That was the first requirement under this agreement, that the roadway access be completed, and those funds were released in August of 2018. Half was to be released when certain qualified utilities, which is a key term here, were completed and available for connection. The deadline for that was April 14th of 2020, so just passed. If those qualified utilities were not available for connection, the remaining money in the escrow account was to be dispersed to Newton Ridge LLC. In the meantime, we began using Central Arkansas Water and North Little Rock Wastewater, and that sale took place. Those lines for wastewater and for water were constructed in a timely fashion, but North Little Rock Wastewater does charge a tie-on fee to areas at this location that join on to a certain line. Those fees are expected to be approximately $1,184 per acre. We don't know exactly where there will be connections or what will tie on, but it's expected that they will be well in excess of this amount, this $61,875. This release of funds will be much less, however, than it would have cost the city to construct the lines that were constructed later on by North Little Rock Wastewater. So basically, this is I just wanted to make sure the council understood this agreement and the terms, and that these escrow funds, we believe those will be released back to Newton Ridge LLC. I wanted the council to have the opportunity to just kind of be informed of the situation and have an opportunity to express any concerns or questions or that they have, regarding the agreement.
Thank you, City Attorney Krebs. Just a little bit of refresher for those that have been around or were not around at that time. We had Maumelle Water Management was here. And we actually anticipated that to meet those agreements that the city would have to build and install the wastewater and water lines simultaneously with the extension of Mosely, which is now White Oak Crossing. And the timing of that all worked out actually really well, in that CAW and North Little Rock Wastewater came in, and then as part of their projects, they ended up running those lines there. And so that one of the benefits of that is that meant there was a significant reduction to the cost that the Maumelle taxpayers paid through the bond indebtedness for the Mosely extension, which was voted on back in 2012. We have several $1 million that we anticipate refunding to reduce our debt now that we didn't have to build those lines. We've kept that project open as part of the interchange project, and it's a good thing that we did, because in late 2018, we had to use some of the Counts Massey extension funds to finish out that last little stretch of Counts Massey as it ties in of White Oak Crossing now as it tied into the interchange. But with that project done, we've got some final accountings, and then we envision returning that money and obviously be letting the council know at that point in time what that specific amount is. But it looks like it'll be several $1 million to the better. So just to compare that to the lost money in the escrow agreement, which I think Amending city attorney's been working on quite a while to try and convince them to give it back to the city. But Councilmember Mosely, is your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask and make sure that Ms. Krebs and you, Mayor, are in agreement that this is the correct way to go, that is interpreted correctly, and that we should do that.
I think, well, the position statement that's laid out in the packet discusses the precise definition on qualified utilities.
Mm-hmm.
The definition is very specific that they can't require any type of additional tie-on fees. So by virtue of the fact that North Little Rock Wastewater does assess a fee that they call and name it for what they see it, and that's a tie-on fee. I think the agreement requires that this portion of the escrowed funds be released to Newton Ridge.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Was there any other discussion, debate, questions on that issue? I do not see any. Have we lost someone? No. Councilmember Gardner?
I'll just ask, is this in the form of a budget this isn't a budget resolution. This is more of just an FYI. Is that correct?
That's correct. These funds are already in the escrow account, so they're not budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Thank you. All right. Well, that concludes new business at this time. And we will move on to mayor's comments, of which I have a few. I'm sure you're all delighted to know. First of all, pardon me?
Did we vote on the resolution on that?
There was no resolution attached with it.
2016. Oh, I see. That was just a reference to 2016-15. Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. It confuses me every time I open the packet and see it also. But so with COVID-19, I wanted to give you all a little bit of heads up. I sent this information out via email, but based on the governor's directives removing the complete closure of gyms, the Parks and Recreation Department is opening up the community center, the walking track, and the weight and fitness rooms are open. The instructors' classes are available to be used as long as the instructors comply with the code. At this time, I don't know of any that have done that. This starts tomorrow. I got some pretty good pictures from Parks and Rec, who is taking the proper precautions and making sure that we're opening up in a safe manner. It has required the removal of about, I want to say, It required the removal of about 8 fitness machines that are removed and some shuffling around so that we can meet the state's directive, keeping a 12-foot distance between folks working out. Of course, anyone that enters the facility will be asked certain questions spelled out specifically in the Department of Health's directive. If they answer positively to any of those, they will not be allowed entry. Everyone has to wear masks unless they're actively working out. And so we're trying to allow the public to get out and enjoy their facilities in a manner that complies with the state's directives on that. I'm hoping here soon. So that means in the community center, the basketball courts remain closed. The state has said at today's press conference, it looks like that'll be the middle of May or even the end of May before they discuss youth athletics. I'm hoping that includes an account of basketball courts inside the gymnasium. We'll see on that. Outdoors, we have at the parks, the playgrounds are still closed and the basketball courts are still closed. I'm hoping that we'll be able to open up the basketball courts soon. I continue to watch the governor's press conferences and look for a good justifiable reason that we think that we can do that safely in a manner that doesn't require police officers to go break up large groups of that may be playing. So just a few of the things that we're talking about, as I've done in the past council meetings. If y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions on COVID-19, now's or the city's response, now is a good time to do that. If you've been out at Lake Willestein, you'll have seen some of the signs that the council requested that we place out on the walking paths, encouraging folks to continue to social distance on those walking trails. But I'll go ahead and open it up if anyone has any. It's Councilmember Mosely.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think those signs out at Lake Willestein did have effect. I immediately noticed more people giving you a little bit more room on the paths. There's still a few people that don't really understand, but the vast majority, I think, are trying to comply with that. Thank you for putting those out.
Well, thank the Parks and Rec Department. All I had to do was say, hey, Philip, did you see the council meeting last night? Council gave you some good directions there.
Mr. Mayor, related to the COVID-19, one of the things that the governor mentioned today was that he anticipated on May the 11th, which is next Monday, that's when the declaration of a public health emergency would expire. And he said that he would be continuing that further into the future. So a question for us as a council is, how long do you anticipate us holding virtual meetings? Can you give me a date?
Yeah, no. So we will get to that in point number G of Mayor's comments, where we will talk about virtual meetings.
Well, very good. Go right ahead.
Wait, we can hop to it right now. So I think these meetings go pretty smoothly whenever we can get everyone on, and we've been doing a pretty good job with that. It continues to be safe, but I feel that it on one hand encourages. I see a bunch of folks commenting on social media. It's nice for me to be able to see what the public is asking and then quickly get those questions answered live. I mean, that's an amazing technology. On the other hand, we have issues like, say, the land use amendment or the zoning amendment, where there's residents concerned, but I don't know if they get the same sort of say, if you will, by simply turning in emails that are read or appearing. And so I think those are kind of and of course the health consequences, potential health consequences of you're welcome, Lane. That's live Facebook for you. No. So that's one of the discussions. And of course the health consequences of meeting. I would recommend that we don't go to live meetings for the next meeting. As part of the City Hall renovations, we're currently upgrading the council room and the audio visual so that hopefully we'll be able to go live while live. But let's open the floor to both COVID-19 and the discussion on virtual meetings.
I personally, I think it's important for government to be as open as possible. And, it's a bit of a unique situation. We've got more people watching our council meetings now than we did when we had an actual council room. But I think it's very important for us to get back into the council chambers as soon as possible, because they do consider us essential, and we don't have to be virtually meeting if we don't have to. So, and then also, I mean, we do have technology with iPads and phones where we still could stream. One of those could be set up temporarily to stream the meeting, just like we're doing now. We've all carried that technology in our pockets, so it'd be easy to do. But it would be nice to get back into the actual council meeting as soon as possible, from my perspective.
Doesn't look like anyone else has any comments at this point, absent City Council.
I do have one comment. I would just say we ought to just kind of be watching what some of the other city councils are doing, seeing if they're coming back or if they're staying in virtual too. So, but it doesn't look like we'll be doing it anytime before mid-June or something. So, thank you.
Yes, and just to reiterate, we plan on having the ability built into our system to live stream those, and it's just about there. We could probably make it happen in 2 weeks, and that'll allow us to do that. For the time being, absent city council objection, and assuming the governor does extend that declaration of an emergency, let's go ahead for the next council meeting. Continuing to hold it here on Zoom. With that, I wanted to draw y'all's attention to spring cleanup. We had, I can't find my document. Good thing I took good notes. A few months back, we came up with resolution 2020-7 asking for an additional $7,000 for spring cleanup once we found out the Regional Recycling and Solid Waste Reduction District wouldn't be covering the cost. We thought it would cost $7,000. Turns out when we use our own staff, it ended up only costing about just shy of $1,300. So I just wanted to, if I had to come to the council and ask for 7,000 more to cover it, I want to share the good news that through Public Works and Sanitation Department using their own labor, their own equipment, and then just dumping them, we were able to do it for $1,300. So with that, I want to note that Civil Service Commissioner Ray Schwenkhart turned in his resignation, and we'll be looking to fill that position. Mr. Schwenkhart and his wife Jody will be moving out of the city limits. We're sorry to see him go, but be on the lookout. Hopefully, we can maybe come to y'all at the next meeting or the following with some folks that have applied. And I'll be talking with, yet haven't, I don't think, the city clerk treasurer about getting that job posted. I have some good news. Tomorrow morning, you guys have heard about this and probably forgot about it, or maybe not. Tomorrow, the city will be launching our C-Click Fix initiative, which will, for those that recall, that is the software that will allow residents who have they want to register a complaint or notify the city about something. They'll be able to do it on Facebook, the city's webpage, or through an app. Stay tuned to the city's social media tomorrow, and you'll see information about how you can let us know about potholes, light outages, stray dogs. All emergency calls should still be directed to 911 because we plan on monitoring it, but not that closely. Also, the City Hall move has gone pretty well. I feel like we're in a bunker up here, although I added this lovely map to my background to make it look like I'm not in a jail cell. As part of that, please bear with us. We've been struggling with internet and a few other items related to the move. All in all, what I jinxed us last Wednesday, I said I think it'd been flowing really smoothly and there hadn't been any hiccups. So as you would expect, Thursday, it felt like everything went down and all of a sudden there were problems. But the move has been going pretty well. If anyone is curious, we can give y'all a little walkthrough here at the building. It's temporary. Phase 1 is done. Phase 2 is being worked on. So it's definitely not completely finished or in its permanent layout. The state revenue office has moved back into City Hall. And so you can, for anyone who wants to visit the revenue office, you come in the front of the building. That'd be the street side of the building. And you come in, City Hall lobby is now open and we're seeing folks using the revenue office there. We've taken certain measures with the lines, making sure that there's proper social distancing. But City Hall lobby is now open. The building is still closed other than that to the public. I wanted to draw your attention in the FYI to a proclamation naming this week as Economic Development Week, both here in the city, and that has been done statewide and really nationwide. And there's probably no better time to be focusing on economic development as we are encountering so many uncertainties in the economy. It's been a blessing to have Judy Keller working with industries that are both looking to move here and then making sure that they're taken care of. We've had some great partners that have donated masks and gloves to the city that are primarily being used by our first responders. But that, and of course, the work that the chamber continues to do in that facility. So just want to recognize economic developers at this time. And since we've already covered virtual meetings, that concludes the mayor's comments. Are there any city council member comments? Councilmember Williams.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a quick moment to address something that I think got lost in our last council meeting. We spoke at length about the donation that the Ottenheimer Foundation had made toward our splash pad construction and project. And it was such a kind thing for them to do, to focus on our community. You know, we kind of got lost in trying to put the money where the money should go in our last discussion. But I just want to take a minute to show some gratitude for that donation. And maybe Councilmember Gardner can relay that message, if you don't mind. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Gardner, for the work that y'all have done to lower the expense for the splash pad and seeing to it that other people take interest in it. It's not just our city that's taking interest in it. The Ottenheimer Foundation thought we were, worthy of their time and attention and their money. And I, for one, do appreciate it. And I would love for you to relay that message.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Yeah, we've raised over 100,000 from local civic clubs and other groups, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for that point, Councilmember Williams. Well said. Is there any additional city council member comments? Seeing none. Madam City Attorney?
No further comments.
Madam City Clerk Treasurer?
No comments at this time.
Outstanding. May Planning Commission Liaison is Councilmember Mosely. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We have a motion by Councilmember Vapurzian, seconded by Councilmember Williams to adjourn. Is there any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning, please say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. We are adjourned. To the public watching, thank you, and thank you, city council members.